So this gentleman is a founder of Electric Vehicles Outlook and LinkedIn top voice for electric vehicles. He advises and talks and hosts at some of the biggest automotive events in the world. He has some serious knowledge about the bigger picture of the EV technology and infrastructure around it. Please welcome Roger Atkins. Roger, how you doing?
Well, Dervish, after that introduction, I'm doing better than I was 1 minute ago. So thank you very much for that.
That's okay. That's okay. So tell us about Electric Vehicles Limited. What do you do? What's that company?
It's me. Basically, put simply, I'm called Electric Vehicles Outlook Limited, which is myself. And in a little shed in the garden. It's a posh shed, Dervish. So, let's be accurate here. And for the last 6 years, I just basically plowed a furrow into the conversation around electric vehicles, having worked, before that for a few companies here and there. But I thought it was about time that I just worked for myself, before I wasn't here anymore. So it was the right time and place.
Yeah, it's interesting because that was my next question to you. So how did you get into this? Because obviously people can't just say, wake up one morning and say, I'm going to be an electric vehicle expert. So how did you get into it?
Well, I would definitely caveat what you just said in that I'm an expert generalist, Dervish. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a scientist. So I would just definitely like to put the context of whatever that specialized knowledge is, or whatever it's called, is born out of knowing lots of people who know a lot of stuff. So I'm a collector of interesting people on a journey that I've been on for quite some time. As to specifically your question about electric vehicles, my own journey began 15 years ago or so when I was at London Taxis as the sales guy. And basically we tried out a couple of hybrid London taxis. And that was where I suddenly discovered this thing called an electric vehicle, a thing with a battery. And then from there, I worked for a startup company called Modec, where we made electric trucks. And after that, Ricardo, which is an engineering consultancy, to then doing what I do now. And I'm very proud of that. But of course, Dervish, I know you're kind of grilling me here, but I've got to say, my friend, looking at what you've done, design and manufacturing spacecraft, Mars Rover, solar orbiter. I mean, I'm in awe of what you've been doing, my friend. Whatever you might think of electric vehicles, your stuff's been pretty cool. So,
well, it's interesting. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's interesting, because I've been trying to get into the electric car design forums and trying to get into that to be a designer for an electric car company, and I've never been able to. And I've got friends that work in the electric car industry. For example, a friend of mine's the lead electrical engineer for Charge Cars, which I'm sure you know of.
I know them well,
and the sister company Arrival, for example. And I've applied many times, and they just, I think what it is because I'm from an aerospace space background, Defense Ministry of Defense, kind of that kind of technology. They seem to think that I'm not capable of designing electric vehicles. But that doesn't matter anymore, because now I'm doing podcasting and I'm enjoying the space designs, working for Airbus Defence and Space for the last 12 years. And it's funny, sometimes I go to a party and someone says to you, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'll design spacecraft. And they go, I'll give over. They say, get out of here. You can't, he's an accountant, he's a doctor, and you're a spacecraft. And they don't believe me. And it's really strange, because I've been accustomed, when you're in it, you don't realize how special it is that you do something quite unique and extraordinary.
Well, one way or the other, you're absolutely right. But one way or the other, you could argue what everybody does is extraordinary, because the bottom line is, I think when and you'll understand this, knowing a bit about space, everything is connected. Everything in the universe is connected. Where the origin of everything comes from, whether it's a black hole or whatever you want to subscribe to the origin of, humanity and the universe. It can be argued and sort of pretty much proved that it's all from one thing. We are all part of a greater thing. And I don't necessarily mean that in, of course, the typical religious context, although I completely understand it when people will explain that in a religious sense, because it is spiritual. There is a spiritual dynamic to it for sure. But whether you're designing spacecraft, whether you're talking about electric vehicles, or whether you're just selling fruit down on the market, look, it all joins up and everybody's important. But let me ask you a question, another quick one then. It's a test, actually, Dervish. I'm going to test you out now. What is the most expensive electric vehicle ever made?
Is it it begins with an R?
Nope. I'll give you a bit more of a clue. It's a solar powered electric car, and it's probably driven no more than 10 miles.
Okay. It's not the one is there one that Honda made?
Nope.
No.
No,
I don't know.
I'll tell you what it was. It was the Lunar Rover, delivered to the moon by Apollo 15, I think it was.
Okay.
And so the Lunar Rover, electric car, powered by solar panels, with batteries. And I don't know the budget for it, but I just know it would have cost an absolute fortune.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. That's the world's most expensive and coolest electric car, powered by the sun. I guess it's still on the moon, because I can't remember them bringing it back.
It is. It's still up there. So there's quite a few now. It's funny, at work we've got a map of the moon.
Right.
And we can pinpoint where each of the rovers are. So all the rovers that have been sent, whether it's from...
Is there more than one then? More than one lunar rover?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go then. There's
actually,
a fleet of them.
Tomorrow, there's a fleet of them. Tomorrow I'll send you a picture of it. I'm sure I can take a picture of it and send it to you. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's got really weird names like platypus and plantitus, and it's got little craters. They've named little craters of where these Mars rovers, these rovers are.
Right.
Of course.
Well, I can assure you the whole thing of space travel and all the rest of it, certainly for someone of my generation, so I'm 61, so I was a schoolboy when Neil Armstrong stepped foot on the moon with Buzz Aldrin. And ever since then, I have been not fixated, but, fascinated by space. I've bumped into a couple of astronauts along the way, obviously not in space. So Ron Garan, who's an American astronaut who's been on the space station twice. I've met Ron and worked with Ron at an event actually over in Holland. And I briefly, met Tim Peake at the Science Museum, funnily enough, in front of the thing he travelled back to Earth in with some cosmonauts. So yeah, look, I was so impressed when I saw what you sent to me about some of your background. But as for the EV industry, it's an exciting place as well. There's no doubt about that. 100%, yes.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's. Do you think that more lunar rovers or that type of vehicle will be sent to other planets? Do you think? Is there something?
Yeah, look, I think that the technology that we're developing with not just electric vehicles, but many things at the kind of leading edge of technology, biotechnology as well as electrical and mechanical technology, are building blocks to take us to other planets. And at the end of the day, whilst, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not an engineer, what I do know from having been around some very impressive people is that almost, you could argue, anything's possible. It's just an engineering challenge. So it's a bit like, can we live on the moon? Yes, it's an engineering challenge. How will we live on the moon? Probably subterranean in the lava tubes. Why do I say that, Dervish? Well, because I know someone who's designed some stuff with that. One of the people that I work closely with, Andy Darga, is ex-NASA. He's now the co-founder of momentum dynamics that deliver high power wireless charging. And that's fascinating. That's amazing stuff. But before that, Andy worked at NASA, scoping and developing the capability for how we can have a moon base. And I talked to Tim Peake about this, and to Ron Garan, and it will be subterranean. It will be in the lava tubes inside the moon, underground. And they know how they're going to do it, and they've some of the engineering challenges have been overcome, and certainly within this decade there will be a moon base, at least one. And then from there, of course, again, not that I'm really understand how, but the way in which planetary orbits work, and the whole kind of challenge between getting from one place to another. This is where the moon bases will take us to Mars and take us to these other planets. So it's a really interesting time.
I mean, the Mars Rover that didn't fly this year, which was supposed to go on the last rocket that went out, it didn't go because we had a problem with, I think it's something to do with the Russians. So the Russians have got a certain module that we want, but the Russians are dealing with, I think they're dealing with one of the, I think it's the Czech Republic or something, and there's a conflict there. So they couldn't resolve that. So I don't think we could fly. But so we've missed the window now. So we've got to wait another 2 years for the next window to come around so that we can launch again. So what we've done with Mars Rover is we've quarantined it in like it's a special container that it kind of looks at the environment it's in, and it adjusts the temperature, and it doesn't let it get too wet in there or too dry. So that's what we've done. But the Mars Rover is looking for life on Mars, right?
Yes. Or water, fundamentally, I guess.
We were in a meeting once, and I just thought, let me ask the question. And I just went like this. I went, what are we looking for, guys? Life on Mars. But why? Who wants to live on Mars? And it gets to a point where you think, actually, do you know what they're looking for? They're looking for another place to go to once we've destroyed this planet. That's my thinking. I don't know whether you see it like that, but I can't understand why.
No, I don't really, because it's a bit like, you could argue here on Earth, why climb Everest? Why take a submarine to some of the deepest oceans? Why do any of these things? I'm almost actually saying it like this, Dervish. You might know of a speech from John F. Kennedy. It's called the Rice University speech, where I wasn't doing that intentionally. I just realized that's what it sounds like. When they were scoping the lunar program, when the Russians had, put man into orbit and all of that stuff, and they were playing catch up, that's how he began his famous Rice speech. He said, why climb the, Everest? Why do a number of other things, And he said, because we can, because this is the endeavor that humanity has, is to push the boundaries. And the boundaries on Earth, we haven't reached all of those. We haven't actually been to the deepest ocean.
I know, I was going to say.
So we don't even know our own planet. But as to why go to these other planets, I think it could be for some people that, an escape, proposition. But I think more importantly, more interesting, it's like stretch ourselves, stretch the capability of human invention to a point where perhaps in doing that we do then solve problems here on Earth. If you can work out how to live on a place like Mars, you're going to deal with a lot of pretty fundamental challenges, which might then trigger all sorts of innovations here on Earth to do with growing food, or to do with some sort of energy sustainability stuff. So I know why you say that, and I've heard many people say that, but I don't think that's the reason myself.
Yeah. I mean, it was only, we were in a meeting and we were having a discussion about how to fit the drill, I think it was. So the drill, I don't know whether you know of the drill, but the drill's a 2 meter drill, and it's in two bits, and basically it comes out it's hooked on like that, and then it just goes like that, and then drills down 2 meters down into the crust of the Mars, and then it will extract a specimen inside, and then it will drop it onto a tube. And then we are now designing something called the Fetch Rover. Have you heard of that?
Don't think so.
So Fetch Rover, as the name suggests, it will fetch all the specimens and bring them back to Earth.
Right, like an electric dog.
Yeah, but this is another reason, this is another issue that I had with working on the project. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a fantastic project, but I said to them, how are we going to control the cleanliness and the the bacteria that we're bringing back from another planet? Because at the moment we don't have that facility to actually put it into a container and bring it back to Earth and then keep it secure enough. Because if you go to, have you ever been to Airbus in Stevenage?
No.
No. So if you go there, they've built a multi-million-pound building just to build the rover. It's a clean room, and you need to go through 2 kind of air vents to blow you, or from top to toe, it blows you. You need to go in there, then you change, you wipe your hands twice, you glove up twice, you wear 2 overalls, you wear a hat, goggles, mask, everything before you go in. That's how clean Mars equipment has to be.
Funny enough, just to jump back into EV for a second, the clean and dry rooms in the Battery Innovation Centre in Coventry that I was at earlier on, last week I was at, same thing, very
Really?
controlled
Okay.
environment, very, very much, dressing as you described with, the full outfit, the goggles and the gloves and everything. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of technology, it has to be very forensically managed in terms of, all of those challenges.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, whether we're going to the moon, Mars, wherever, fundamentally, yeah, here and now, the big challenge is, of course, tackling man-made accelerated climate change. And urban air quality. There's always been those 2 things, and they're obviously linked.
Yeah.
And I think many people believe this year, when you look at what's happened, that this is almost just like a nature sideswipe. The global pandemic, in relative terms to what a global climate pandemic could deliver. This is nothing. And look at the catastrophe it causes.
Yeah.
A single, relatively simple virus has basically just unraveled the whole of, the way human beings work on the planet, which is madness.
Yeah.
And you think, in relative terms, it's a grain of sand in a desert compared to what, the catastrophe of climate change could possibly, do to all of us. So, in one way, and I'm not trying to be too philosophical, we should take this as a very important lesson and learn from it.
Definitely. So electric cars, do you see them completely wiping out the combustion engine? And what do you think of the 2030 Boris Johnson's making this ban to actually just stop petrol and diesel cars being sold in this country?
Right. Well, a couple of questions there. I would put it like this: whatever it takes to seriously reduce carbon emissions, and whatever it takes to radically improve air quality in towns and cities all around the world and in countries, is what we should do. Now, at the moment, it does appear that it should simply be about banning this and changing that and doing something else. And it's inevitable that people can be attracted to that because it's sort of fairly simple to understand.
Yeah.
But it's a bit more complicated than that. If you look at what causes most pollution in towns and cities in terms of air quality, it's the taxis, it's the buses, and it's vans and trucks.
Yes.
So you could argue it may be that if we simply banned those from being petrol and diesel, and we did that over a shorter period of time, let's say even 5 years, and we used a lot of the resources and money that maybe we would be putting into the electrification of cars, we'd get there quicker, and we'd actually deal with, I mentioned earlier, the twin imperative. We deal with the air quality issue better and quicker, which is fantastic news for children, especially ones that go to school and all the things where they get a lot of, inhalation of pretty serious things, rather than trying to sort of do everything everywhere and hope for the best. So that's my simple answer in one way. As to 2030, we were going to be there anyway. If you look at what that declaration said, is that we won't sell purely combustion engine vehicles in 2030. Well, that was going to happen anyway, because more and more cars now are hybrid to some extent, either what you would call a mild hybrid, where they have a stop-start capability and a tiny battery, but still an engine and a fuel tank, or, a bit more of a hybrid vehicle, a plug-in hybrid, for example. But nonetheless, they still have a combustion engine in them. But because they're not pure combustion engine vehicles, they're not being banned until 2035. So sometimes these things attract attention, but if you look in the detail of what they are, this stuff was happening anyway. I think over that time, Dervish, something else is going to happen, which will be far bigger than electric vehicles, which will be, we have the option to travel around in what some people can call glorified taxis, but they will be non-piloted vehicles. They won't have a driver, and they'll be autonomous, they'll be electric, and of course they're connected. But that could well be that for a lot of people, if you live in a town and a city, you live in North Kent, you go to work where you go to work. If all of these things can be replaced by electric mobility that's connected and shared and utilized a lot more, in other words, doesn't get parked for most of the time, then I think that may well take over this journey of, ban this and ban that and you can't have a car stuff, over the next decade. And I think that's the bigger change to come than simply switching to electric vehicles. And I share that view with plenty of other people. So I'm not some kind of mad lunatic on the fringe who's, got this view. Technology is the liberator. The most inefficient thing of a vehicle, electric or combustion engine, is its low utilization. The fact that you only drive it for a period of the day, not very much.
So are you actually saying that you think that we won't own cars and we'll just have an app or something where we go, I want to go from A to B, and you can probably share a car if someone's going that direction? And
yes, that's what I am saying. I'm saying exactly that, Dervish. So, for example, if you could go about your work where you go every day now and get taken to work and it's all fine and dandy, and as and when you wanted to go and do something else at the weekend or socially or whatever, you could, and it was relatively easy. And I said to you, that was the proposition. And then I also said to you, oh, and by the way, Dervish, that 400 or 500 quid every month that you would be having to spend on owning a car, you've now got in your pocket. You might be convinced to do that.
I would be, yeah, definitely.
There you are. And I think that's how it will transpire.
Yeah.
So this will be an economic change. It won't be because people will necessarily say, oh, I'll do my bit for the planet. Oh yeah, I'll do that because, these kind of crazy people in California have said that's the future, or whatever else. It'll be because the alternative to owning a car will be better and cheaper. And when you look at all innovations and technologies that have come over the years, they're the main two reasons why they get adopted, not necessarily because of legislation or because, somebody says you should do that because you'd be a decent person if you did. You do it because it's better and it's cheaper. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. But then would the car manufacturers lose out because they're selling less cars, do you think?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. And the answer is, it depends. If they don't redesign their business model so that they can make money out of people using those cars. Because you could argue, if this all worked in the way I'm suggesting, and I'm not the only one, as I say, that manufacturers then don't sell cars at all anymore. They just put them to work. So instead of the car coming out of the factory, you know, and going to a dealer and being sold to a customer, if that car actually, you know, drove itself out of the factory gate and then actually went to work, and the owner of that vehicle might well be the manufacturer. Maybe they never actually sell it. They just then earn revenue from people,
leasing,
you know, using the rides. Yeah. And leasing, you said that word, and the leasing then becomes leasing by the day, by the hour, by the trip, not leasing for a whole month, where you pay 500 quid to lease a car and you drive it for, you know, out of that month, you know, two whole days. So for the other 28 days, you're paying a lease for a car you don't even drive. You know, it's on the drive at home or in the car park at work. It's mad when you think about it.
I would definitely, I would love to be able to just order a car, comes to pick me up, and I could just read a book and 55 miles one way all the way to work. Don't worry about dodging traffic and there's, you know, nothing, just completely just chill out and relax, and even possibly have a cup of tea, you know, make a few calls, whether they're work or personal. You know.
Well, there's the thing, Dervish. You say have a cup of tea on the way to work. Well, mate, on the way home, maybe on a Friday night, just on a Friday, you can have a beer.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's very true as well, isn't it? Yeah. So do you think the infrastructure will cope with so many electric cars trying to plug into the you know, the framework, the infrastructure, and all that?
Well, that's a slightly different question, because that's suggesting that everyone just swaps from what they own today to owning an electric car. And as I'm saying, I don't think they will.
No.
But to answer your question, which gets asked regularly, can the grid cope? The answer is yes.
Okay. So because I have looked at the power stations that we're building, and I know China. I know you've looked into China, and I know you've been over to China, but China are building a lot more. I know they're a bigger country. There's more people out there. They're building a lot more power stations than us, aren't they? So they will probably cope better with more electric cars. And I know there's a lot of electric cars companies out there at the moment who are startups.
Yes, there's too many, actually. There's hundreds. I think the last count, there was something like 500, which is ludicrous, even though it's a huge country. But yeah, look, you're right to talk about this, because, you know, like I said earlier, everything joins up. You have to have a joined up strategy around energy, around infrastructure, around mobility and transport, and you know, industry, all of these things, because they of course they interconnect, and they are dependent, they're codependents. And yeah, China has for a long time had an industrial strategy that I think I know what they call it. It's called Made in China 2025. And I'm not in absolute detail, but the electric vehicle bit I know very well. And you know, they have systematically built up around the world a supply chain network that enables them to have more battery gigafactories than any other country on the planet. And, you know, a secure supply chain of the battery minerals and mineral processing, which is equally important. To be in a position to do this. And why are they doing that? Well, yes, because they do want to have more electric vehicles, but they know that they need to have batteries, they need to have gigafactories, they need to have the ability to also manage and store more renewable energy. So batteries, of course, aren't just for electric vehicles. They are also for renewable energy. And also, Dervish, ironically, if we do build out, you know, a good stock of electric vehicles, be they buses, taxis, vans, or cars, those batteries can be plugged into literally the grid. So they can the electric vehicles can end up being theoretically as much a solution as a problem. In other words, they present a storage, you know, an aggregated storage proposition for the grid in terms of managing and balancing renewable energy, input and output. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's
There is a country
serious
doing
and
that at the
interesting
moment,
thing.
isn't there? Doing trials on that, aren't they? Is
Yeah,
it
well,
Norway or?
look, Nissan have been doing this for many years. So the Japanese have been doing it. The vehicle to grid technology capabilities there. Again,
Yeah.
in principle, for sure, some of the practical challenges actually reside within domestic properties where
Hmm.
the capability, if you have an EV, so I can charge my EV at 7.2 kilowatts. I'd like to charge at 11, but it's unlikely. Well, my house isn't equipped to do that. You typically need three-phase electrical supply to do that,
Yeah.
or even greater charging. But if you try pushing electricity back into the grid through your house, in all areas, it's not an area I'm completely au fait with, but I get the gist of the
Mm-hmm.
basics. The way electricity is distributed around the country and how it arrives in your house and where you live in a given location, there are, I'm sure you've seen them, substations
Yeah.
that sit around. So but the majority of the housing stock in almost every country on the planet was never designed to be vehicle to grid equipped and capable. And was never designed to have electric vehicles everywhere.
Mm.
And I'm not saying this is the reason why I don't believe mass adoption of EVs is going to happen and we're going to have all these other things, but it could be a challenge going forward, not so much in the level of electricity available and the flow of it backwards and forwards, but the simple, capability within domestic properties and the substations close by and, in housing areas, etc., for all of this to work. But listen, I'm equally, Dervish, straying into an area that I don't understand
Yeah.
100%. There are people who are far better equipped to answer your sort of question like this than me.
Yeah.
That's just an overview, if you like.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
a clumsy one as
Okay.
well.
No, that's fine. And so, are you aware of EMC, so electromagnetic conduction and things like that? And does that affect? I mean, the more electric cars we've got, the more charging stations we're going to have, and then I'm sure we're going to have problems with interference, aren't we, at some stage? Of
Theoretically, we would have, but that's why we have regulations like ECE Reg 100,
Mhm.
where EMC is carefully managed and monitored. Unless your vehicle passes that in part of the homologation test,
Yeah. Mhm.
then, which I think is ECE Reg 100, but certainly within European whole vehicle type approval, one of those 40, 50 tests you have to have that make up European vehicle type approval includes EMC, a very rigorous EMC, electromagnetic current test,
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
ensure there isn't that challenge of people in the proximity of vehicles, be they just electric vehicles anyway, or certainly if they're charging, that is safe.
Mm.
Because another area I'm involved in, which I've been a long believer in, is wireless charging, high power wireless charging, where you
Mhm.
don't need to plug your vehicle in. It simply takes a signal from one source and then is received in the vehicle wirelessly over a relatively short air gap, 20 centimeters or so. It's very
Okay.
efficient, very effective, and works on a number of vehicles around the world already. And in fact, one of the companies that I'm on the advisory board of, Momentum Dynamics, deliver this on electric buses. They've been doing it in America for several years, and they're now doing it on Jaguar I-Pace cars.
Okay.
And there'll be a fleet of those in Oslo in January, electric taxis, Jaguar I-Paces, that
Yeah.
will be wirelessly charging.
So
And the EMC in that is perfectly safe.
okay? So is that they have to stop and charge, or are they moving and charging?
No, stop and charge. This thing of charging
Mhm.
on the go, wirelessly charging is, yeah, it's feasible, but it's wholly unpractical and incredibly
Yeah.
expensive. The capability you have to deliver that is just on the absolute raggy edge of what you can or even what you should do. So
Yeah.
wirelessly charging vehicles when they stop. So this is where buses and taxis work well, because buses and taxis stop a lot.
Yeah.
You
They're
know,
always waiting around, aren't they? Yeah.
it's what they do, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
to charge them up.
Yeah. 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 That's good. That's good. So, what do you think of these resto mods then? I mean, I know you've had an interview with the one of the guys at Charge Cars. What do you think of that sort of thing? Because there's a lot of companies doing it now.
I think it's a great thing. I love it.
Mm.
Charge cars are amazing. I mean, they are absolutely the pinnacle of electric vehicle engineering or re-engineering. All they're doing, they're not actually gutting a car, because, you know, again, that was sort of, to a great extent, a lot of that process at the moment is not particularly environmental, but they just take a 1967 body shell from a Mustang. They get those from a licensed operator in America, and then they basically design a 21st century, you know, electric supercar around that body shell. And I think going forward, we'll see more of it. I think it's a good thing, but we have to work out how to do it effectively, environmentally, and cost effectively. But, you know, switching internal combustion engine cars into electric cars, yeah, if we can do that and ticks all the boxes, yeah, crack on.
So I take it you drive an electric car, you don't drive a combustion engine car.
Let's put it this way, Dervish. If my answer to that question was I drove a lovely diesel, you'd probably just, you know, pull the plug on the interview right now. Yeah, I do. I drive, at the moment I drive a Jaguar I-Pace, which I absolutely love. The performance of the car, it's a blend of traditional stuff. So it feels and looks like you know, what I suppose you'd call a traditional car. But it's a state-of-the-art electric car with a really good range, you know, a real-world range of anything between 220 and 250 miles. The performance is glorious. The handling, you know, the basic structure of the car in terms of how it's built and put together, the steering geometry, the engineering of the chassis, everything about it makes it just a lovely car to drive.
Okay, so I'll tell you something. I was talking with someone about electric cars a couple of weeks ago, and I said they need to make the exhaust tone of a combustion engine inside an electric car and on the outside. And the reason I say that is because I don't want to get run over by one.
Well, you say that with a sense of fun, but you're right. And there are countries now, and maybe it'll end up being everywhere, where the legislation says they have to have an external noise of a certain decibel level. I think you're, again, slightly tongue-in-cheek, but not a bad idea, that putting a sound into a vehicle where you can almost dial it up. You know, you can be in your Jaguar I-Pace and you can think, I want this to sound like a Ferrari Testarossa. You know, I know it isn't, you know, I'm not stupid, but I'm going to dial it up, and outside people will think, oh my God, you know, but there you are. But, you know, there's a lot, going back to the thing about what should we build and when should we build them. You know, electric commercial vehicles, let's take electric delivery lorries, for example. I don't know where you live in relation to, you know, a town or a city, Dervish, but if you live, for example, in the middle of Paris or London or wherever, and I know certainly when you go and stay in a hotel in one of those big cities, you can easily get woken up sometimes at 4 or 5 in the morning by some delivery bloke. Okay, he's going about his work, but you hear this truck coming along the street, you know, dieseling away or whatever, and it's a bit of a nightmare. But if the delivery trucks are all quiet, silent, you know, that'll open up a lot more delivery windows late at night as well, and early in the morning for things. But the thing about safety, I wouldn't make light of it. I do think there is an issue looming about this, because I notice in my car at the moment now, I'm super cautious with people. And if someone's crossing over in front of me, I don't, as you can sometimes, I guess, tend to do, just blast the horn thinking, you know, come on, mate, you must have seen me. I now assume they haven't heard me. So therefore I kind of just hold back and I don't blast the horn, because I just think it would be bad manners apart from anything else. But you know, you raise a good point, my friend. Point.
Definitely. Okay, so I'm going to round up some questions that I normally ask people. And I would love to speak to you for another hour. You're such an interesting person, and I'm sure we'll do this again, and I'm sure we'll cross paths at some point in the new year. I'm hoping that we can meet face to face, and I've said that to all of my podcasters, my last 10 people that I've podcasted with. I've said to them, look, I'd love to sit down, have a coffee or have a beer and just talk about the stuff that we've been talking about and more. So hopefully next year we'll have a better run of it, and we can even if it's at an event, maybe, or something, you know.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm enjoying talking to you and finding out all your stuff as well, Dervish. But I'm like you, I can't talk another hour because I haven't had my dinner yet. I've got to go and get my dinner ready soon.
Yeah. Me too. And I've got a little boy to put to bed, so.
Well, that is trust me, I'm the father of two boys that are now 30 and 28. Let me tell you, my friend, if you've got a little boy, that is the most important job in the world. And I hope you read him a bedtime story, and I hope you cherish that moment, because it only lasts a few years, and you'll never get it back again. And they're the yes. So let's crack on, so you can go and do the most important job in the world.
Okay, thank you. So 5-car garage, unlimited value. Now, this doesn't have to be EV cars.
No,
I'm sure it's going to be. But
no.
I would
have. Yeah, I would like. I would definitely like a Rimac Concept 2, because I just know what it is and it's amazing. I would like a Citroen DS, probably a 1959, 1960 Citroen DS.
Yes.
Definitely. I would like, I'm not sure if I could get hold of one, but a GM EV1. So the first kind of proper electric vehicle, and most of them got mashed up. All part of a story called Who Killed the Electric Car, by the way, which you can watch that on, I think you can watch on YouTube even.
Yeah, lovely.
So that's car number 3. Car number 4 would be the Volkswagen Beetle, because that was the first car I ever had. And I just, ask a child to draw a car and they draw the shape of a Volkswagen Beetle. It's just, lovely. And I know this is going to be so corny, but the 5th car would be the Jaguar I-Pace, because I just love driving it every day. And it's, one of the nicest cars I've ever been in. So they're my 5. Okay,
great. So if you were to go on a road trip, who would you take, where would you go, and what car would you be in?
Right. Okay. I'm going to go straight to this one. It would definitely be Elon Musk. It would therefore have to be probably in a Tesla, I guess. And we'd probably, I imagine, just so we could take a lot of stuff with us, go in a Model X. And I'd like to go from one side of America to the other. I'd like to go from San Francisco to New York.
Okay. Fantastic. Resurrecting a forgotten or bankrupt car brand, which one would you choose?
Oh God, that's a really tricky question. You've really put me on the spot here, which reveals the fact that I'm not really an automotive boffin.
Don't worry, a lot of people struggle with this.
Yeah, I guess it would be one of those kind of really fancy, amazing American brands from the 1950s, like Pontiac or something like that, where they made extraordinary looking cars that looked like skyrockets, with big lights on the rear, fenders and tail fins. Yeah, all of that stuff. Yeah, it would probably be one of those.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's my questions finished. Where can people find you? What's your links and your social media outlet profiles?
Okay, I only really do one thing because, I'm an elderly gentleman and I don't have time to do all these other things like Insta, Twitter and Twittergram and I know what they're called really, but I'm just trying to be silly. LinkedIn, if you look for Roger Atkins on LinkedIn, I'll probably pop up somewhere there. Reach out. I connect with most people, not everybody, because I don't believe it's fair to just connect with anyone and everyone unless you can see something that might be good for them and good for you both. But and I hope this doesn't sound whatever it sounds like, but if you just want to follow me, great. I follow lots of people on LinkedIn that I'm not connected to. Some of them are famous people, some of them aren't, but there you are. That's what I'd say.
Okay. Well, look, Roger, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honour talking to you. I've enjoyed the last 45 minutes or so. I hope our listeners do. I'll be posting this out on probably first or second week of January now. And I hope you stay in touch and we can hook up in the new year 2021. And I'm enjoying what you're doing with the EV scene. So take care. all the best to you, really, seriously.
Well, thank you so much. And I wish you well with what you're doing. I know you're kind of starting out on all of this. And I think it's great, particularly in this year of all years, to hear people starting out on things, having a go at something and, looking to carve out a fresh niche for themselves. So, good luck to you. But listen, as I said a moment ago, you need to go and see Dervish Jr. And young Dervish and go and read the bedtime story and do that. You don't want to be spending your life talking to old gits like me. So thank you for that time. I've enjoyed it too. So I wish you and all of your listeners the very best as well. So
thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Take care.
Cheers, Dervish.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.